to the Healing Half. My name is Mickey Spear, and I'm joined by the one and the only Jan Warner, who has written Grief Day by Day, which has sold over 50,000 copies, as well as the founder of the very successful Facebook page called Grief Speaks Out, which has over 2.4 million followers. And our format is a little different. As you can tell, we had a little bit of tech issues right before this. So you get to kind of see both of us here really quickly while I do the intro. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here today. We are going to be talking about kind of an interesting topic of celebrating grief, which might sound really crazy. So I'm going to let Jan explain what she means by that, and as well as share her wisdom and her lessons for all of us to take. But before we get to that very important topic, really quickly just wanted to introduce myself. So my name is Mickey Spear. I am a grief author, musician, and talk show host. And each and every week, we get to take less than 30 minutes to touch base and learn how to address our own wounds, as well as help others heal theirs. So if you are new or joining, welcome. Please don't hesitate to head to mickeysphere.com. Jump on my email list where you'll get one email per week where I will have the show notes, the replay of the show, the YouTube link of the show if you have Facebook friends who aren't watching it on Facebook that you want to share this with, as well as a bunch of other resources. So all this stuff that Jan and I are going to be talking about, I will link in that email. So if you are watching, please, please, please let Jan and I know in the comments. We would love to see that you are here. Let us know where you're calling in from, whether it's live or as a replay. And this is perhaps the most important, both of me and Jan are super passionate about helping people who are hurting. So if anything we say tonight resonates with you, tag a friend, share this message with them. We are trying so hard to get the word out so that more and more people feel less alone in their loss. And last thing, before I transition to the wonderful Jan, why am I talking about this? I'll let Jan share her story and her why here in just a minute. But really quickly, my mom passed away when I was 13 years old from cancer. And I spent the better part of a decade keeping people and all hard emotions at an arm's length away the best that I could. But as you know, you can't run from grief forever. So eventually it started to crumble. Everything in my life started to just go haywire. So I thank the good Lord found myself in the counseling. Again, that was about 10 years after my mom died. And that's really when these pieces started to fit together. And I realized I had a lot of unprocessed grief, and that processing it, which was so scary and so terrifying and so, it challenged a lot of my internal beliefs before, but finally processing it felt so darn good. And that's why I wanted to start the show where we can just process our hardships together, learn from people who have been there before us, like Jan, who's got such a wonderful story to share. So thank you guys so much for being here. Jan, I'm going to kick it over to you. Do you mind letting the audience know, how did you begin this kind of empire, dare I say, of a lot of copies sold and a really massive Facebook following? Like, how did you get into the grief world?
My husband died. He was the only person in my life that really took care of me. We had a special relationship, as everybody does with their person. And he was very handsome and very charming and lied to me about how old he was. So when he told me his real age, I knew he would probably die before I did. And I had an idea of what grief was like. I would be sad, I would miss him, but life would go on. I didn't realize that when he died, I would be totally shattered. I was a very independent person, and I felt like a house that's blown to bits in a hurricane and only sticks are left. I didn't know what to do. I considered suicide for a while because I really thought he would come and get me, and I would actually go to sleep with my hand up in the air because I knew he would grab my hand. It was crazy, and pull me up. And I lived in an apartment building, which I later realized meant he would have had to, say to people on the way down, "Excuse me, I'm just going to the."
Oh,
I have the
no.
dark sense of humor. And then I thought, no, I'm a good wife. I need to go to him. And luckily, I realized that that wasn't a good solution either, because I have come to believe that if you're still living, even if you can't find your purpose yet, that you have one, there's a reason why you're still alive. And it might just be a smile you give somebody that you don't know makes a big difference. So there I was, my raison d'etre, because he was kind of thuggy a bit and he loved us talking a bit of posh French. My reason for being was dead. So what was my reason for being? And it took me a while to even get to the point where I could consider that. He was a recovering alcoholic that was available to other alcoholics and addicts
Mm.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So I thought I can honor him by making myself available to other grieving people. If I reach one person, that's enough. And that's how it all started. So,
Oh my gosh. Well, first and foremost, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like you said, we all have ideas of like what it will be like when we lose someone we care about, and then we're actually in that moment, and it's infinitely worse than your brain can imagine. So I'm so sorry that you're in that moment. And I guess, you have a Facebook page that, again, everybody listening, I will make sure if you're on my email list, you know how to get there because I think you should absolutely follow Grief Speaks Out. You have so many grievers, 2.4 million to be exact, on this page that are hurting and their hearts are breaking, and they express so much of that to you in the comments of the photos you post. Is there any themes that you have seen from those people or your own experience that for that person, and I loved your metaphor of a house shaken by a hurricane. Do you guys have any wisdom for someone who's in that spot right now?
well, not shaken, obliterated. I mean, I really
Ob-
felt obliterated, and a lot of people feel that way. Um, I have people from all around the world. So, one thing that I've learned is whether you're in Iraq or the United States or South Africa, grief is the same. If you leave politics out of it, everybody feels lost and alone. So something that happens on Grief Speaks Out is people realize that they're not crazy. That
Mm.
I ask a question every day. One of the questions is, what's the craziest thing you've ever done? And I remind people that they're on Facebook and it's an open page, but anything that people share, other people also have done. And they're not alone. That it's really because we don't talk about it. I got started because I heard the craziest thing that I was supposed to stop grieving in 6 months to a year,
Oh
which
my
makes
gosh.
sense to me. It seems totally foolish. I had one woman post that her daughter died and she had been grieving for her for 74 years. And I had somebody else post that their father died when they were little and they were in their 70s, and the same thing every day of their life they thought about their father and wondered what their life would have been like had he lived. So the norm is actually to grieve for the rest of your life. It's how you learn to live with it, live around it, make a deal with it, however you do it, so you could be fully alive with grief. That's, I do know people that have asked to be released from grief or feel like they've healed. For me, it's more of I have a layer of grief, which that idea of celebrating grief just came to me recently, but it's hurts and it's painful and I hate it in lots of ways. But I always remember that it's because I was so lucky to have such a big love, one that
Oh.
people search for their whole lives and often don't find. So
Oh, that is so precious. And I think like you said, maybe let's dive in. So when I asked for the audience, when I asked Jan, as I do most of my guests, maybe you guys don't know this, I usually ask them what they kind of want to talk about. And usually what they have to say and what they want to talk about is infinitely better than anything I could come up with. So the funny thing is, Jan said celebrating grief. And when I first read that, as I'm sure a lot of people did, they kind of were like, what's there to celebrate about grief, right? But then, of course, I know Jan has probably an explanation for what she means by that. So I guess I'll pass that back to you. Sticker shock. Everybody says celebrate grief. But let me ask you, what do you mean by celebrating grief?
well, it took me 4 years to get to this. And I realized that my husband was a really vibrant, vital person.
Mm.
And I was doing him and myself a disservice, almost a desecration, to make his death more important than his life. Because
Mm.
what was important was the time that we spent together. So even if somebody has tragically had a miscarriage, they've still spent time with the baby that they imagined having. It doesn't matter if you're together with somebody yet unborn or somebody for your entire life. They're your person. They're the person you care about. So in celebrating him, that makes his life more important than his death. But it wasn't like I woke up one morning and went, oh, gee, I'm happy, I'm grieving. You know, people would say, how are you? And I'll say, fine, but my husband's still dead, because I make time for the sad, painful time of grief too. But I also, he loved life so much, I feel like I owe it to him to live double, for him and for me, while I'm waiting, hopefully, I don't know if it will happen or not, but to be reunited with him. So the other thing that I say that a lot of people like is, I call it decorating the waiting room. Um,
Oh, that's
so, but
adorable.
I want to have stories, you know, if we get to be reunited, I don't want him to say, so how have you been? And I went, well, I didn't do anything except stay in my bed and cry, which I have spent time doing, but I'd like to also say, you know, I had these adventures.
Yeah, oh, that is so beautiful. So am I correct when I say celebrating grief is kind of acknowledging the fact that if I hadn't loved deeply, then I wouldn't be in this pain, and therefore, in a roundabout way, I should celebrate his life and in the joy that we had together because it's something that's so worth missing. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, because what I'm really celebrating and resting in is the love. I mean, obviously, my first choice is, you know, he's been dead for 12 years. I have a dark sense of humor, and he hasn't even come back once. I mean, how rude is that?
How
But
dare he?
yeah, you know, we all sit and we wait for the impossible. The only thing I can really do to make people feel better is to make their person come back. I can't do that. So what can I do instead? And it was, somebody wrote me a letter when he died. Her husband had died, and then her 50-year-old only child, a son, who was an amazing man, died. And she said, I can't do anything about the pain, but I want to remind you about the love.
Mm.
Um, so even with little things, like he loved tennis, so I would see it was time for Wimbledon, and I would get really angry that how could they have Wimbledon, because he wasn't there to watch it. And then it was like, no, think about all the joy he had when he was watching it. So it was like a conscious effort to shift my mind from spending time with the sad. I mean, I believe in a good wallow. I have nothing against, you know, staying in bed for a day and crying or doing whatever I need to do, but then shifting back and going, you know, that I'm grateful for having him. And I'm not grateful for not having him in my life, but I'm grateful for having him in the life for the time that we had together.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
hopefully, you know, it's like, hopefully I'm not imagining, you know, it's, I was listening to somebody else today on television talking about talking to somebody they love who died. You know, I feel it. I still feel his presence. I don't care if it's delusional or not. It's where I think Mitch Albom says death ends a life, but not a relationship. I'm still in a
Oh,
relationship with him. Even if you're
that's beautiful.
atheist, you still have them with you in your heart and your mind and your soul. And you know, it's by becoming this, I never expected to have so many people following me or to have a book, but everybody knows us now. So I make sure not only do I remember him, but so does everybody else.
That's so beautiful, and I loved what you said. And I kind of want to zero in on it maybe a little bit on the kind of the how. How do I do that? And you were talking about, okay, instead of being mad at Wimbledon, I think we've all been there where you're like, how is the world allowed to move on when my person is in here to be part of it because they're part of
Mhm.
my world and I'm so frustrated. But you were able to then think about the joy he felt when he watched that and to celebrate that. And I think that was so profound within itself, because we oftentimes think about like our gratefulness for somebody, like, oh, like I'm grateful for my grandma and I'm grateful for my mom and like all the things they did for me. But I guess I've never really thought to take it a step further and think about the joy that brought that they had. Like, oh, my grandma loved Price is Right. Like, I'm really sad actually she never got to be on it because that was one of her dreams. Add it to the grief list, right? And so I would always watch Price of Right and be like, oh, this reminds me of grandma. And of course, have a good cry, like you said, on the couch. But I never thought to be grateful for her joy when she watched that and give thanks. I think that is just so beautiful.
Thank you. And at the beginning, it was just show up. Like I knew I loved theater. And I would go and I would sleep through it. I slept through Daniel Craig and Hugh Jackman, which is not that easy. And I'd wake up when everybody applauded. And then I saw Carrie Fisher, um, who's for those of you who don't know who she is, she's a writer and comedian who's passed away. And I laughed and I stayed awake and it was like, whoa, I could laugh. And I still do that today. I'll make plans because you can have accidental joyous moments and it's okay. Um, and the other thing is helping other people. Like when I was totally frozen, I could go on Facebook and find somebody that was suffering and posting about it and post something encouraging. And I'm still Facebook friends with some people that, have a hard time. Because if I'm helping somebody else, I'm not thinking about me, I'm thinking about them. And I had a chore of the day. So at the end of the day, I could say I did this, even if it was paying a bill or doing one small thing. I bought a plaque that said, have an adequate day. And I went, do that. And even today, have a good day. Sometimes it's like, don't pressure me, but I can have an adequate day. And then it spread, out, from there. It's like, this is the time I'm going to feel sorry for myself. This is the time I'm going to like start working on this or see a friend and see what happens. So it's like, for me, I started at, I don't know, I'm going to say below zero. And then I just built in small things at a time. And actually, Grief Day by Day, the book is set up that way. It's got 52 different themes, and there's quotes and there's exercises. And for example, the exercise on taking care of yourself says about moving. If you want to go for a run, go for a run. If all you can do is move your little finger, start there. Because it
I
means,
love that.
even today, sometimes it's not easy. And I think it's good to acknowledge that it's when I say celebrate grief, the layer of grieving, I asked on Grief Speaks Out if people feel like it gets easier or harder. And most people said harder. And I think that's because it's exhausting, but you develop like a toolkit of ways to say, okay, this is really hard. How do I get up in the morning? Because grief isn't a trauma that happens in the past. It happens every day. Every day you wake up and go, okay, how do I live today without? And sometimes it's more than one person, it's several people. But then it's the switching focus. I'm always switching focus. In all areas of my life. Here's what's really depressing. Here's really good. This person was really unkind to me. This person was really loving to me, so that I don't get stuck in any one place.
That's amazing. And kind of in that mindset vein, how, when you're kind of talking about celebrating grief, I would love to kind of hear again, in your own words. I think we talked about it before the show, so I want people to hear you say it because you say it so eloquently. Kind of the relationship with deep love and grief, and again how celebration fits into those components.
The quote that people quote in the book most is that the depth of grief measures the height of love. Not
Mm,
everybody has love in their life. Not everybody, I can't imagine, it would be arrogant of me to imagine what it's like to lose a child. But not everybody has a child. Not everybody has a person that loves them. So I have asked a lot of people if they could avoid the pain of grief by never having met the person that they're grieving for. And not only one person of all the people I've asked has said that they would make that trade. Everybody else says no, they wouldn't give up a minute they had to spend. So, and I believe, I don't believe they're negative emotions. I think we're given a full rainbow component of emotions for a reason. So I get angry. I yell at my husband sometimes, how could you leave me alone? How could this happen? I get sad. I get everything. But I also want to do the other too. I want to celebrate. I don't want to shortchange him. I don't want to say your impact on my life died the day you died.
hmm.
I want you to teach me every day how to live, because if you inspire me instead of deaden me, that I can keep celebrating the fact that we were pretty amazing together. And I actually used to say that my husband was the most alive dead person I know until I started meeting other grieving people. And I realized there are an awful lot of alive dead people out there. It's our people, they're physically dead, but emotionally they're still very alive, and they still, I guess I wanted to find a way to allow him to play a positive role in my life, even after his death.
I
It's
love
a
that.
see. So yeah.
That's such good legacy work, allowing them and their impact to continue on through you. And like, gosh, 2.4 million people, 50,000 books sold. You are absolutely doing that. So as we wrap up our time together today, I guess, is there any last words of wisdom or words of encouragement that you would have? And then I guess if you could just tail it off with, how can people find you?
I'm really an ordinary person. So when people say these wonderful things about me, I'm a little bit like looking around to see what they're talking about. So it really is just one moment at a time. As my husband used to say, we only have moments. So what I've done in the past 12 years is increase the number of happy and productive moments. I am Actually, if you Google Jan Warner and grief, I come up, which is very strange. I did not intend to have this in my life. The name of the book is Grief Day by Day, Simple Practices and Daily Guidance for Living with Loss. I did not pick that title, by Jan Warner. You can Google it. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Libraries will order it. It has lots of reviews. So if you call your local library and say, would you order a copy? A lot of libraries will do that, so you don't have to buy it. Facebook, Grief Speaks Out. It's an open page, so you can check follow if you want. You don't have to. So I often say my email on the page. So I'm there if you want to find me. And we're all totally alone, and we're all doing this together. So that's the puzzlement of it all. We bear the unbearable every day, but we do it because we love and continue to love.
Oh my gosh. Well, I am so grateful for you, for your eloquent words and your wisdom and your vulnerability. So thank you so much. And for everybody watching, if you are on my email list, I am just moved in the moment, so I'm just going to roll with it. I would love to give a copy to anyone. I'm going to have like a free giveaway for my email list. So if you want to perhaps win a free book of Grief Day by Day, I want to make sure I'm thanking my fans for being on my email list. So throw your hat in the ring, keep your eyes peeled for the book giveaway. I would love to be able to do that, to be able to support Jan a little bit too. And Jan, just thank you so much for being here. We are so grateful. And everyone else, if you liked this episode, if anything she said resonated with you, let us know in the comments. I'll make sure that Jan sees all the comments, and that way she knows that who watched and what you guys thought was valuable. And again, don't forget, tag a friend, and I will see you next week for another show. Bye, everyone.